Hi, everyone. Welcome to Around the Ladder. I'm Erika Steinberg, and this is the podcast about career paths that don't follow the usual script. We've all heard about climbing a corporate ladder, someone else's ladder usually, but careers often zigzag, they stall, they take unexpected turns. If your journey hasn't been a straight climb, you're in the right place. I love the idea of going around the ladder and finding a path that fits who you really are. So, on this show, I get to speak with people who have taken unconventional routes by choice or by chance, and they found success on their own terms. My guest today is Laura Green. Laura is a growth strategist who helps entrepreneurs build, grow, and protect the businesses that they love. She partners with founders and creatives to clarify their vision, align strategy, and design systems, a process that really closes the gap between the leader's vision and day to day operations. Through coaching, consulting, and speaking, she helps leaders move toward their intended impact with more clarity and less friction. Sounds good to me. She loves charts, nerdy nature books, good beer, and sneakers. And when she's not working, you can find Laura gardening, hanging out with her three wonderfully wild kids, or sneaking in a nap, which is what I would be doing. So, welcome, Laura. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much. This is rescheduled from a couple weeks ago when I was really under the weather. So, I appreciate the flexibility. And it's nice to have
Yeah, of
you on.
course. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh, well, I mean, so for anybody who doesn't know, and most people probably don't, Laura and I met during a visionary circle planning session. And we've been through two of them together now that the wonderful Ariana Tanine runs with Devin Lee. And so we know a little about each other's businesses, and I really got to know your career path through those. And of course,
Mhm.
that made me want to have you come onto the show to talk about that. So let's start with your career. Of course, I did some spying and sleuthing, and I saw that you started in education and then found yourself in a business development role. So I was, of course, wondering, like, what was that about? Like, what were you doing? Was it surprising to make this change?
Yeah, I definitely started out on the ladder and then found myself going a different direction, as I think probably a lot of us do. So, education was what I was my intended career, and so I was working with this private education firm doing direct instruction. And as sort of a young, ambitious woman, I was, after the fast track, and so I moved into some supervisor roles, and then really started focusing on expanding the business and bringing in revenue. And so I got to a point where I was tasked with, I didn't even know to call it business development at the time, but, I was tasked with, hey, meet with these families and see if they would be a good fit. Or, hey, we are hoping to open a new learning center in a new market. Can you go do that? And, I was like 22. And so I knew nothing about doing that. And I said, sure, I can go open a new learning center in a new market. Why not? And so I did. And it was so much fun and so gratifying. And, I started to look into, what is this thing I'm doing, and started to focus more and more of my time on that. And I think it was my mom who was like, well, this is called business development. And so it was sort of I didn't realize that the shift was happening while it was happening, but was really an exciting transition for me to move to a different focus in growing something that I was already really passionate about. And so sort of began to see my passion and interest in strategic growth in that way, and then just sort of followed that thread in a number of capacities afterwards.
Yes, because then, I mean, I can, knowing that now, knowing that background, I can see how you ended up moving into entrepreneurship. Like it seems like a
Yeah.
very natural progression, really. Was it a smooth transition? Was it like a mess? A little bit of both?
Yeah, it's really funny. I think anytime we work for another company, you become very aware of the tensions for that organization, right? And so I began to see how much I love strategic growth, and also in time become really aware of the problems where the organization's values and culture pushed up against revenue. And I had sort of honed my chops in business development and was wanting to focus in something that was closer to home, both geographically and from a values lens. And so I made a switch to being a nonprofit executive director. I was really looking for an organization that was small that I could help scale and was sort of in a place where they could take a chance on me and doing a new thing. And so I did that and found that, hey, these tensions that came up in values driven growth, pushing up against revenue are happening all the time. Everybody has them. It wasn't just this one
Yeah.
off thing. And so, in sort of recognizing that, sort of made that an increasing part of my focus for that organization and then for other organizations that we were working alongside of. And that is largely the focus of my work now. And so that has just sort of become a pattern that I recognize. So in that way, it was a very smooth transition.
Yeah.
There were some ways where I sort of felt the rug had been pulled out from under me. I showed up at this nonprofit and I was like, so, how do I get an email address? And they were like, oh, I don't really know. You'll have to figure it out. Or, you know, I I was like, where's the can the marketing department make me a flyer, please? But of course, there's no marketing department, and you just make the flyer yourself. And
Yes.
so it was a little bit abrupt and a bit of adjustment in those ways. But like I said, the tensions and that were emerging were the same everywhere. And so I found a really intuitive interest in those things.
Yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, when you talk about like those tensions bumping up against each other, I just found myself thinking about my world, which is law firms. And
Sure.
you even see it there. I never thought about it before, but you do see it. And I think maybe that's why so many large law firms, really every large global firm, also has a pro bono department. Because
Exactly.
the lawyer, yeah, you want to be able to act on your values also.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. I never thought about it that way. So when you were making this move into entrepreneurship, and you articulate the the gap and the problem so well, what you were seeing, what were you hearing from others, from potential clients, or as you started to go into the market, did you find that you had to uh, explain or articulate the gap for people to get it, or were you already hearing about it from people and from clients and
Hmm.
potential clients?
Yeah, that's really interesting. What I found emerging is that the discomforts that I was seeing are ones that are really resonant with a wide group of people. So when I explain, you have a business that works, but it doesn't excite you in the way that you thought it would, or, you're trying to grow towards a particular vision, but you can't figure out how to make it work in a way that seems aligned with the things that are important to you for someone who's in an earlier stage. Those are things that almost across the board, people say, oh, yes, I really understand that. What people don't realize is how similar organizations in those two different seasons are. And so I'm really, as I'm helping these very early stage founders and these established organizations and nonprofits, I'm walking through very similar questions and processes in both cases. We're just returning to vision and moving in alignment from there. But they feel like they're in such different seasons and they have such different sets of resources at their disposal and constraints that are limiting their options that it feels very different for them. So that's the part that where I end up doing a lot of education around
Mhm.
like you guys are not actually solving different problems. You're solving for the same problem but at very different stages and circumstances.
Yeah, I can see that. It's almost like the grown-up business can't remember what it was like to be a kid.
Exactly. And it's so fun for me for that reason to work with folks in both of these seasons because with the early stage, there are a lot of them are creative business owners and they're very eager founders. So I can say to them, my last meeting was with somebody who is 10 years down the road and here's what they're struggling with and here's what we can do now. And then when I work with those more established organizations, it's so helpful for me to help them sort of rekindle that early enthusiasm that sort of compelled them to start this thing from the beginning. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's really fun for me to kind of move back and forth between those groups.
Yeah, I do the same thing when I do a planning session. One of the thing with again, my clients are all law firms. I really like to say, especially to a firm founder or somebody who took over leadership of a firm or a group, like what brought you here? If you're new to the firm, why did you choose this firm? If you've been here your entire career, what's kept you here your entire career? And really try to bring them back to that emotional connection.
Sure.
Because no matter, and law is such a mind-driven profession
Yeah.
that it's sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, let me pull you along back, let's go back in time and remember why you made this decision.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the same place I start. So we're on totally the same page there.
Yeah, yeah. So, one of the things that I learned about you also was that you grew up with a chronic entrepreneur, which I love.
Mhm.
I did not. I mean, for me, I think I started my business when I was 50. It was my 50th birthday present to myself. And it took me probably 3 or 4 years to realize, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur. Like this, I didn't
Sure.
own it until several years in. And
Yeah.
I grew up with parents who really were, work company people. You worked for the
Mhm.
company, you had your job and you had your security. So the idea of growing up with a chronic entrepreneur really uh, was so different for me. So, like for you, how did that dynamic shape you, change you, like steer you in a certain direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it was really formative for me in a way that I don't think I realized until down the road. My a lot of people call themselves serial entrepreneurs, and my dad has always referred to himself as a chronic entrepreneur, and he's just as like, hopelessly ambitious about starting a new business. And so I think in the ways there's really two things that I saw. My mom was more of like a company girl in the way that you're
Yeah,
describing. And so there's a very different risk tolerance there.
yeah,
I work with a lot of clients who find themselves where you are, and I say that they're like people who want to have businesses but don't want to be business people. They just want to do a thing that they like. And so I think there's a group of people that work that way that I know really well. But I think what I saw in my dad as this entrepreneur who started so many very different things was how precious a vision is to a founder, and that regardless of how high or low stakes the idea is, their heart is in that thing, whether they mean for it to be or not. You can't even help it. And so I've seen how fulfilling and life-giving it is when it works, because it's so deeply meaningful, even if you never wanted it to be. And also how like heart-wrenching it can be when you'd have to decide to shut it down, or when it's not going the way you thought it was. And so I think that helped create a real fondness for me in realizing how high the stakes are for those founders, and really what all they have invested in their projects in a way that really makes me a cheerleader for them. That's the thing that gets me the most excited, is seeing people be successful in the thing that makes them really excited. And so I think that really pushed me in this direction in a way that obviously I couldn't have anticipated, but makes me really well equipped to be intuitive and supportive of the folks I work with now.
yeah. And I think that's so important because one of the things that has surprised me, probably more than anything, about being an entrepreneur and launching and nurturing my own business has been the how absolutely intertwined my professional journey and my personal journey are. Like any
Yeah.
hangups, any issues, any challenges that I'm feeling in my personal life are going to show up in my professional life. And
Hmm.
there's no place to hide. Like, when you're at a job and you're working for somebody else, you could say, oh, well, I'm feeling really put upon because it's them. It's all on the outside. It's this, and
Right.
this. And when it's your business, and the same issues keep coming up, there's no place to hide. So
Hmm.
for me, it's like it's been a crucible really for me to like work through all of my shit, quite frankly.
Truly. Yeah.
And you're like you're working with people. So for me, like if I had had somebody like you at the very, very beginning, I wonder what my journey would have been like. I mean, I'm glad I went
Mm,
through it the way I did
of
because
course.
to where I am, but that
Yeah.
must be so interesting also for the people who work with you because it's not just about the business, it's about you as the person. And
Yeah.
you can't extricate the two.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have this really firmly held value about, telling people the hard truths, like those really sort of uncomfortable tensions in growing a business that has so much of you wrapped in it. And I think this is one reason that so many of my clients that are drawn to working with me are folks who are so deeply values driven, because they're folks who say, there's this particular group of people that I really want to be able to impact, or, finding joy in my life is the thing that I really want to pursue. Or, I've had clients who have all kinds of things that they want to be able to prioritize, whether it's, having a day to walk in the woods, or, being able to pick their kids up from school, or both. So I think, as you said, you're who you are and the way that you're personal values come into your business
Mhm.
is really important in ways that you've articulated, but there's also, it means that there's not a preset roadmap for someone to follow because they need to feel like and be assured that the roadmap is designed for them and their values and what makes them thrive and their sweet spots, their zones of genius. And so I think that's one of the things that I'm most interested in is working with groups of people where, a one size fits most template for growth is not going to be very helpful because we need to customize it to who you are as a person in a way that you've articulated really well.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. So I know that one of the services you offer as a way to get into working with you are the clarity workshops. So, and it's about
Mhm.
2 hours. So,
Mhm.
what in that time, it's not a long time, but it sounds like it's enough time, especially if somebody is very coming in, ready to share and ready to really dive in. What typically comes up during those? Like, how do you use what you learn to begin working with somebody?
Yeah, great question. So, in those workshops, we really look at three main areas of the business. One is the vision, one is the strategies or tactics that you use, and the third is the systems. And so, what helps us get really deep really fast is that we dive straight into the founder's vision. And in my sort of philosophy, all things need to follow and be aligned with that vision. And so, the trick to having a strategy that is differentiated for each client and that works for them is being as specific and authentic about their vision as possible. And so we get real deep real quick, and it can get deeply personal very quickly because we're diving into one of the things that comes up most often is I find founders who say something out loud about their vision for their business that they've never said out loud before. It's something that they've known in their core, but haven't been able to articulate in a way that made it clear that that was a priority for them. And so that those are like the goosebump moments where it's usually right when they get really frustrated with me and they say it's just, and then they say this beautifully profound statement that they've never said out loud before that's like really what's energizing to them, and it's the whole energy shifts and it's like, okay, now we can do that. And so it's magical, right? You
I just
it,
want to pause on that because I can see it happening. Like I could literally feel that happening. That
yeah,
is to say something out loud about your own business and something that's so personal and so core to you, that to say it out loud for the first time. Because when you know it, you might know it, but you don't articulate it. You might know it internally, but you're still not assigning the words to it. So
right.
say it out loud is to assign the words to it. That it's so powerful.
And then we see how transformative a strategy can be once we put that at the front of it, right? Because if you just have this generic vision that's like kind of around the services that you provide, then the strategies you're looking at using for growth are going to get you towards that thing. But if the thing that you've said out loud is sort of generic and not as authentic to you, then it's not going to get you that thing that you want. And so when we say that very specific and authentic vision out loud, it allows us to be that much more specific and intentional with the strategies we're creating so that we really can honor all the pieces of that in a way that's much more compelling for and fruitful for the founder.
So then how does this, I get how speaking like this and articulating this feeds the strategy. Then how do you start to draw this, like make the connection to the processes? Because to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you see it in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where I really started as a systems strategist, actually, when I started on my own. And I was like, wait, I can't build you these systems. You don't know what you're trying to do. And so I just kind of moved backwards from there. So I'll give you an example. I did one clarity workshop with a girl who, she's not a girl, she's a lady, with a lady who has a printing business. And she, when we talked about her vision, she was telling me all these things that she wanted to do about large format printing. And so she planned on opening like a brick and mortar where people could come in and place orders. And so when we really dug into the heart of her vision, what she really got down to was that she was really passionate about helping small businesses represent themselves well through large format printing. And so then we realized you don't actually want any B2C business. All you want is B2B contracts where you're helping these small businesses package themselves and present themselves really well in their own marketing. So guess what that means? We don't need a brick and mortar. You don't need a system to accept orders from, Aunt Sally's garage sale online. What you need is a marketing funnel that gets you to other business owners. And so in her case, we went from looking at, building out a system to bring in leads in a B2C context, and instead looked at a system for a CRM where she could manage marketing and getting in front of other business owners and business communities, because we realized that the heart of her vision was taking her in a different direction. And so the tools she needed to get her in that way were going to look very different.
Yeah, yeah. And so that really illustrates the more impact, less friction, rather than
Yes.
having the friction and the dissonance of like always trying to reach out to the B2C customer. She was able to
Yep.
focus.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And wait, so you discovered that in a clarity workshop? You
Yeah,
took
we
that
got to the,
workshop?
and so so we're, yes, exactly. So we're talking about, how do you make a way for these, how do we account for these other projects? And she said, well, I don't even really like doing those. And I was like, great, you don't have to. One of the things I say most often to my entrepreneurial clients is you get to pick. You're the boss of this. You get to
Yeah.
pick, and there's not a wrong choice. If you don't like doing those, don't do them. You're making the rules here. So
Yeah. It's, you know what? Sometimes it's hard to remember that.
it really is.
It can be really hard to remember that. I find myself thinking some days, if I am having a slow start at around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I start thinking, oh my God, I start getting anxious because I think,
Hmm.
so many years working as an employee,
Right.
I
I'm
start
gonna be
thinking,
late.
like, I'm
Yeah.
late, I'm late, I'm late. And then I'm like, who am I going to get in trouble with? I don't have a meeting right now. I don't have, but it's hard to break that pattern and to
And
realize that,
Erica, I think if it were easy to do that, people wouldn't need me, because that's really at the core of what I'm doing, is helping folks remember that they get to pick how they're going to build their business, and that they should build their business in a way that is true to their vision. So I
yeah,
think that I haven't ever framed it that way, but I think that is really gets at the heart of this work, is reminding people that top to bottom in your business, you get to call the shots. Let's build it in a way that you
yeah,
pick.
yes.
We're so prone to doing what we see all the people around us doing in a way that is not always helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, they would still need you for the systems, but
Sure.
they
Yes.
would still need you for the systems. But I remember, in the visionary circle meetings that, I will never forget this when Ariana said the first time to me, I can't remember if it might have been in a one-to-one, and she said, well, you have to build the business for, in a way that it works for you. If you build it just for
Right.
your clients, and it doesn't work for you, it's not going to survive, and you're not
Right.
going to survive. And that kind of
Right.
like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that, maybe and I've been doing this now 6.5 years. So imagine it, like, it does take a while for that message to sink in and to really fully integrate that idea that I get to pick. I don't have to ask
Yeah.
somebody. I get to pick, and I can bring this all together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So I'm imagining this now. So when clients finish their work with you, whether it's been a clarity workshop, I know you do strategy sprints, coaching, what kind of transformations are they sharing with you? Like, what are there common threads to them?
Yeah, so there's a couple. The first common thread is that by and large, the most common transformation that I see is sort of what we were describing earlier, which is this sort of renewed clarity about what your vision actually
Mhm.
is, in a way that's really energizing, especially, as we described, when it's someone who maybe hasn't even admitted to themselves the real heart of their vision before. The other thing that I see that just makes me very excited is, I'm really passionate about building something that's easy to operationalize. Like, I hate when people complete a workshop or something and you fill out worksheet pages and then they just sit in your cabinet, you don't ever use them. So I want these to be things that people can use all the time, day to day. But more than that, I want folks to have the clarity and confidence to make decisions and think strategically themselves without having to go consult the playbook that we made together all the time. And that comes from that clarity around vision and understanding what the strategy is for. And so instead of having to think like, what's the best strategic decision in a situation, they know very clearly what it is they're trying to do more of, what it is they're trying to do less of.
Mhm.
And so making those strategic decisions feels less like a guessing game. And I see a lot of increased confidence in seeing leaders make those decisions because they have lots more clarity on what their growth is, like what growth means for them. And so it's easier for them to decide which direction to take their business or what kind of growth is a better fit for them because they have a better awareness of what growth means for them and where they're trying to go.
Yes, I get that. And wait, say that again about the growth, the kind of growth that works for them.
Yeah, and what growth means for them.
Yeah.
For some people, growth means more clients. And so we're going to take a certain strategy to make sure that that happens. For other folks, growth means fewer clients doing bigger projects, right? This is like a simple example, but they are going to create different sets of circumstances that are different for, some are going to be better for other people. And so we need to figure out what growth looks like. And once we figured out that, we can decide how you're going to move towards that growth in a way that has less guessing
Yeah.
involved.
So it sounds like when your clients come to you, regardless of the stage of their business, that they're going to have some blind spots. They have some misconceptions, they have some blind spots. Do they do those change over time? Like as, if somebody, do you ever have examples of somebody coming to you early in their business and then they kind of go and do their own thing and then they come to you again late? Like I'm just curious about like, that I think about that kind of experiment. Like, how does this shift over time or does it?
Yeah, it does shift over time. And, somebody asked me one time, like, are you allowed to change your vision? Of course you are. You get to pick. If you're changing it every day, we're probably doing something wrong. But certainly, like, we're all growing and evolving over time. The kinds of growth that I see and the way I see people's needs shift has more to do with where they are, uh, where their vision is impacting their business and so where they need support and making sure that their vision is protected. In the very early stages, that means figuring out like sort of the basics of a business model. How many clients am I going to take? What am I going to do with them? How much am I going to charge for them? That sort of thing. Whereas later down the road, it might mean, it's important to me that I only take a certain kind of client. And so I'm going to build in a system that makes it harder for poor fit clients to find me. And so they're going to be there. These are all ways that we are working to keep vision at the center of a business, but they are coming up in very different spaces. And so they're needing very different tools. And so I think in the earlier stages, we're sort of starting by protecting vision very broadly in like the large scale structure of the business. And in time, assuming that we have grown in alignment, the things that we need help protecting have more to do with those like finer pointed systems where
Yeah.
we're, really working to protect the vision in the smaller day-to-day
Yeah,
operations.
I can see that. And you mentioned the poor fit projects or the poor fit clients, the projects and the clients that you take on, but you should probably say no to those. So
Mhm.
how do you help your clients identify those and avoid and not just identify, but avoid them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a great segue. It's exactly what we just said. When we know what your vision is, we know what you want more of. And so we know what you should say yes to. And so we build systems that make it harder for you to do new things that don't align with that. And
You can't
so
pick yourself.
yeah, exactly. So, like, my printing friend is a great example. Like, she doesn't want to print graduation banners. And so she doesn't have a way for someone's aunt to fill out a form and order a banner. That's on purpose. She cannot say yes to those projects because she doesn't even have a way for someone to print that order. The only way that she can do business is by sending someone a customized proposal that gives them a package that they can accept. And it doesn't lend itself to doing those one-off projects that she didn't like. I had one client who came to me and said, I'm totally booked up for the year. And I want to grow, but I don't want to just like charge more. What's best for me? And so we realized that for her, what growth means for her is having more free time while making the same amount of money. And so we look at how can you do that? How do we need to adjust your system so that you actually don't have a function that allows you to bring in more big projects right now? All of those systems that you would use to book those things, we're just going to toggle them off, quite literally, like turn off that booking link because this is not what you want more of. We want more of a specific thing. And so we're going to move your systems in that way.
Got it. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine doing that. Just turning something
I know, but it
you
feels nerve-wracking because again, we're used to thinking about what we've seen around us for what growth means. So
yeah.
we have to start with what growth means for each person so that we can make the right call in doing something that feels a little risky like that. It
Yeah,
only works when we know it's right for you.
that's true. That's true. So, okay, so I want to take this discussion a little bit more macro level.
Sure,
We've got, I mentioned to you before we started hitting record that I was on a webinar talking about, it was focused on law firms about, optimizing for AI search. And so you've got
sure.
trends like freelancing, entrepreneurship, AI, and everything is shifting. All of this is shifting workplace norms. So, how do you see the role of business strategists evolving with all of this over the next, say, I was going to say 5 to 10 years, but really 10 years? Like, who can predict that? Let's say like three,
Yeah,
five, maybe.
sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, I wasn't in that same webinar, but I think all the time I'm seeing, links or free guides about how to use AI smarter, how to
Yeah.
smart prompts with AI or whatever. And so I think that's where the strategy becomes really valuable is we're sort of learning, and of course the AI landscape is changing rapidly, but I think a lot of us are sort of learning what AI can and cannot do for us at the present moment and sort of understanding what this tool is and how to use it. And so I think what's going to be most valuable moving forward is understanding what prompts to feed this machine in a way that's most useful for us. And so I see my role, if someone said, open chat GPT and said, give me a strategic plan to grow my business or my nonprofit, it would certainly give you something.
Yeah.
Would it be that valuable to you? I don't really know because again, in the work that I am doing with clients, we're digging deep into their personal values and how they measure and define impact and what growth looks like. And so I think the real value that folks like me can continue to provide is digging into that intentionality about what we're asking any kind of AI agent or smart tool to produce for us. And so if you took all of that information and said, this is my vision, these are my boundaries, here are the specific things that I want to increase, and you put that into an AI tool and asked it to generate a strategic plan, that might be more helpful. Whether it would get you all the way there or not, who knows, but it would be much more valuable than just asking for something generic. So in my mind, that's where the real distinction is going to be in things that are seeing and recognizing the individuality of each business owner and leader in a way that, for now at least, AI just can't do.
Yeah, and then you also, that scenario you just described also makes the assumption that each individual knows the answers to those questions.
Right.
Because sometimes, a lot of times you don't know, you don't necessarily know. You need a guide, you need someone to facilitate your even thinking about it and to push back when you're
Mm-hmm.
being generic and to question and to really help guide you through the whole thought process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I believe it or not, it's already been more than half an hour. I feel like it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's flying.
So I have one other question for you, and then I want to get to how people can work with you. But for me, and I love asking this of everybody, what unexpected lessons or rewards have come from you really going around your own ladder rather than climbing somebody else's?
Yeah, I think that I love this question. I think that you get to pick mantra came out of me telling myself that, similar to what you described. It's like, you know what? When you get to that point at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you feel like, I just am not sure my brain is going to do any more work today. I can go home. There's a reason I work for myself. This is why I get to pick if I stay here right now or if I leave. I'm
Yeah.
gonna leave. Um, and so it's, I got to a point where there were some seasons where I realized that I'm kind of dreading the stuff on my to-do list, but I'm the only one who put them there. I don't have to do this. I don't, I'm going to finish the project I agreed to, and then I'm going to pick not to do those anymore. And so I think, as you said, it takes a lot of discipline to keep that at the center, but I think that sort of became a series of light bulb moments. I had to continue to remind myself of that. But I think that's one of the things that really emerged for me is if I am going to build something myself, I might as well build it in a way that really works for me. And so I think that has shaped a lot of how I've built my own business, but it informs very much of how I encourage my clients to build their business too.
Yeah. And when you say it, it sounds so clear and so easy. And yet so many of us don't even come to that point where we say, oh, I get to pick. Like I kind of want to write on a post
Yeah.
and just keep it always visible. I get to pick.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. And you were asking like what my work with clients looks like over time. And it's really that. It's like at the beginning, we have to do a lot of excavating to get down to what that thing actually is. And a few years down the line, when you come to me, I'm not digging it out of you. I'm just saying, remember, this is what you said you want. Go do that. Don't do this other thing because that's not what you want. And so yeah, we really just need people to reflect that back to us over and over again.
Yes, yes, I love that. I love that. So, okay, so tell us quickly also how people can work with you, where we can find you. I'm going to put it all in the show notes as well, but I just want you to
Sure.
have a chance to talk about the ways that you work with your clients.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you can find me at impact-vector.com. And for individual clients like solopreneurs, creatives, early stage founders, those clarity workshops that we've been talking about are really the best way to start because they allow us to get into a lot of nuts and bolts very quickly. And if somebody's unsure about if that's the best fit for them, you can contact me on the website and we can chat through it. For more established organizations, I usually start with a similar version, but it's a little bit more robust because there's more moving pieces when you come to leading an established team and just a few more factors to consider. So those are some of the first ways to work with me. I love working with entrepreneurs on a coaching basis where I get to meet with them every other week and we really get to see through how we're putting this vision into the mechanics of a business. But every time we do that, we've still started with the same workshop because that's what really allows us to, again, excavate what's really at the heart of us. So that's the best way to get started.
It all sounds wonderful, and I can see and feel how, like I can literally see how you can like lead your clients on this path where, they probably look back a number of months later and over the course of working with you, like, oh my goodness, look how far I've come. And
Yes, for
that
sure.
in and of itself is just, that's where the magic is to see,
Yeah, it's very rewarding. Yeah,
see how far you've come. Oh my goodness,
absolutely.
I am so glad that we did this. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been
Yeah, thank
even more
you.
fun than I knew it was going to be.
I appreciate that. It's fun for me too.
So that's it for this episode of Around the Ladder. Remember, there is no one right way up. So take your detours, make your moves, and keep carving your own path. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or a colleague who is also on their own unconventional journey. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.